Okay. All right. Oh, perfect. Good. I'm gonna put this on the desktop.
That'd be, yeah, sure, that'd be, I assume that'd be the safest thing.
I'll put it over here. And
Yeah.
the desk, it is over. I just, the only thing is I gotta make sure these damn assets came over with it, because I don't know why.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Never ever works. How about print?
Really.
What is it here in the back of my neck?
Yeah.
All right. So wait, actually, what the one, this one, go to it, this one here. Oh, yeah, good. So.
Yeah, oh, we're not sharing it yet, so yes, yeah, well, absolutely, good.
I just wanted to get the play.
Explain. Yeah.
That's good. And I don't, depending on time, Aaron, I may not have you have the entire song play, so you can just kind of fade it out, and I should just give you a high sound and say, let's cut it out. It's kind of a unscripted thingy. Q&A, that's the last one. Okay, before Q&A. So then we come back into it, and I'll come back up here and talk through this particular part of it. And this is what I really was curious about. So this is. So that's the transfer from the digital transfer from the preservation rail with this copy.
Fantastic.
So listen to this. You're gonna go. So this is 1923. This is Melissa Wojcinski's transfer. Stop this. I mean, the difference is it's shape. I mean, she got it direct from the cylinders. I don't. So you can hear the other one in the back. It's using the endpoint cylinder machine, and you know it's apparently the thing of British Archives has this now. What was that? Oh, that's you. So shit, that's my recording. What the hell? All right, so cool. Everything is.
So we can go ahead and start carrying.
Right.
So
Okay, wait.
Zoom.
You do it.
Let's see if I can do this. All right, let's go back here. I've already started the meeting. Oh, there I am. And I'm talking. There. PowerPoint.
Yep. That's it.
And share sound is clicked. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Guha, by the way. Hi, Session. Nice to meet you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Okay, thank you. You guys are doing your person work. That's the start video. Oh, make a change host admin.
Yep.
Admin.
Okay, you should be in there. What's that? Since you're sharing your screen.
Yes. Yes, please silence your phones if they're not already silenced. Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to introduce our two panelists who are going to talk about the Centering Community Voices project at the American Folklife Center at the Library of Congress. So our first presenter, and they'll be sort of presenting together and having a dialogue, so I'll just introduce them both and then get out of the way. Dr. Guha Shankar is Folklife Specialist in the American Folklife Center of the Library of Congress and a Fellow of the American Folklore Society. He serves as a project coordinator for Ancestral Voices, a collaborative curatorial initiative with Indigenous communities. He is the current co-chair of OHA's Task Force on Ethics and the Law and co-directs the National Civil Rights History Project in collaboration with National Museum of African American History and Culture. He conducts research to locate and provide access to library collections for curriculum development by educational partners in the Teaching with Primary Sources Consortium. Dr. Shankar provides skills-based training in field research methods and preservation, including project planning, interviewing, photography, and archival best practices. He has extensive experience in media production, particularly ethnographic film, publishes in a range of traditional and digital media outlets, delivers public lectures, and conducts technical workshops for a variety of audiences. And on top of all that, in his spare time, provides reference services at the AFC. His dedication to helping Indigenous communities and individuals document, preserve, and sustain their cultural traditions earned him an Honored One Award in 2024 from the Association of Tribal Archives, Libraries, and Museums. Our second presenter, Boots Lupenui, okay, all right. Is a native Hawaiian artist, musician, and storyteller living on Kohala Mountain on the island of Hawaii. He has made 2 documentaries searching for old unrecorded songs of Kohala and was awarded a community collections grant through the Library of Congress to further that work. His band, the Kohala Mountain Boys, has performed at the Library of Congress, and he's also been a featured storyteller on the Moth. He holds a master's degree in fine arts from the Academy of Art University in San Francisco, and his paintings have been shown at the Venice Biennale and the Cuban Biennale and in private collections around the world. His paintings, storytelling videos, and music videos can be seen at his websites, bootslupenui.com, and his new YouTube channel is called Kohala Mountain Stories. And with that, I'll turn it over to Guha and Boots.
Thank you so much, Dr. Little. Thanks to all of you here in the audience here at the Keone Hall in the University of Hawaii Manoa campus, and to all of you out there in Zoom land and whatever other media platforms you are tuning into. Let me begin by saying, in case you don't know which panel this is, I have not had much coffee, so I'm not really sure where I am, except I know that I'm on a panel called Centering Community Voices from Fieldwork to Archives with my collaborator, Boots Lupenui. The paid political party announcement behind me broadly outlines what the center is and what we do in the realm of archival practice and outreach with communities. This presentation, as you look through it, will expand on the last 2 bullet points I've outlined on the slide in the presentation today. By that, I mean, we, Boots and I, are going to focus on how the American Folklife Center, a special collections division at the U.S. National Library of Congress, intersects and collaborates with communities of origin and practice. We're going to talk about it in 2 distinct but overlapping ways. One of the ways we work with community members is to assist them in undertaking fieldwork to document contemporary local cultural expressions, to then process the collected items in order to preserve and sustain this documentary heritage in a repository, with the aim of providing access to the collection by the library's web portals for both community members and audiences at large around the world. The second way we help sustain cultural memory is to preserve and maintain legacy recordings that document a range of expressive cultural forms, much of which is contained in obsolete and unique recording formats, and to then return that material to descendants and practitioners in the contemporary moment. I'm going to save discussion of that second topic because it'll be the culminating point of my presentation, in which I'll be ably assisted by my collaborator and, well, I'm not sure collaborator is the right word, Judith Gray, head of reference at the American Folklife Center, and a special guest who will be here later today. So on the topic, the first topic of this presentation, I'm going to focus on the Library of Congress's Community Collections Grant Program, or CCG for short. The CCG awards are part of the larger, quote, of the people widening the path, end quote, initiative, which is generously funded by the Mellon Foundation to the tune of $15 million over the course of 3 years. Not insignificant. The CCG program, administered by the American Folklife Center, principally my colleagues, John Fenn, who's head of reference and outreach, and Michelle Stefano, a fellow folklorist and staff member, uses the Mellon grant to award funds to individuals and groups who document their community's own cultural traditions. So here is basically the triadic relationship that we have here between the Mellon, the American Folklife Center, and community-led documentarians. The projects administered under the CCG have the goal of creating research collections developed and produced from the community's perspective, with the specific aim of adding unique local documentary materials to the library's holdings. I would be remiss in not noting that the center's annually awarded Archie Green Fellowships, which is ably administered by our colleague Nancy Gross, provides similar funding and processing support to field workers, albeit on a much more modest scale. I'm happy, ecstatic even, this is my ecstatic face, to introduce one of the 29 recipients of the CCG Awards to date. This is, as Aaron Biddle has noted, Boots Lupenui, artist, musician, filmmaker, native of Hawaii, which is the principal reason I'm here in order to present with him, and resident of the Big Island. I will note regrettably that Dr. Lola Kwan Batista, another Hawaii resident and professor here at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, who was scheduled to be on this panel, could not join us to talk about her work to document the tradition of novena singing in her Chamorro community. Novenas, as most of you know, are Roman Catholic religious songs sung by the Chamorro people both in Guam and in diaspora. And Dr. Batista did an amazing work to document these cultural expressions. You can see that work on our library portal. So Boots and I will be discussing several things about his documentary fieldwork, such as the impetus behind the project to collect the heirloom songs of Kohala, the process of conducting documentary fieldwork, the impact of such work on community awareness of their own cultural traditions, and how such initiatives can be sustained or not. It's aspirational, of course, in just a few minutes. A word or two about Kohala. For all of us from outside Hawaii, it's a special place on the Big Island. It is located on the northernmost tip of the Big Island and is famous for a number of things, including its beautiful landscape, amazing scenery, vistas, and importantly, for being the birthplace of King Kamehameha I. Kohala and some portion of its musical heritage is now memorialized on the LC website, thanks to the collaboration between Boots and the community performers who recorded their music for the project. Parenthetically, I'll note that many years ago, I completely sort of, I don't know why I overlooked this, but many years ago, I traveled to Hawaii and the Big Island with the National Museum of the American Indian, had the rare privilege of recording the music of the legendary musician Clyde Kennedy Sproke, who actually lives down the road from Boots, if I'm not mistaken. The late Kennedy Sproke. He was resident of the place and also a National Heritage Fellowship recipient. We have Kennedy's work in the American Folklife Center in various collections. The NEA Fellowship, for those who are not aware of it, is the highest public honor for traditional artists that the U.S. gives out. In order to properly set the stage for the discussion to follow, I'll begin by noting that many of the 29 projects that were funded through the CCG are still being wrapped up, right? That is, the fieldwork materials are still being sorted out to the grantees in some cases, but many more are being processed by my amazing colleagues in the Center's Archives and Processing section. And since we're here in Archives conference, I think I can ask for a round of applause for them. Thank you. And Boots can attest to the work that they did in getting his collection up on one. My colleagues are a truly gifted bunch, and without them, we would indeed be a very dark archive instead of an active, engaged resources for community members and patrons. Several collections are in the queue to be launched in the library portals. This may be a horrible metaphor, but think of the library's website as a very small mouth of a very large harbor with several really incredibly big ships, all crowded behind one another, waiting to get out to sea. Like I said, it's a tortured metaphor. That's sorry. If somebody could come up with a better one, I'm happy to entertain that. At this stage of the proceedings, we have 5 of the 29 projects fully processed and available to view on the LC site. They range from everything from Puerto Rican coffee farmers to Boots's work, to weaving and Yap, and music of Houston. We have work with the Homa community, the Indian community of Louisiana that's going to be shortly in the pipeline, and on and on. You can actually look on the library website to figure out who the grantees have been over these last 3 years. And let me show you just who we have. So as you can see here, the ones that are available on the site are Celebrating Chamorro Novenas by Dr. Batista, Sonidos de Houston, documenting the city's Chicano music scene. And you will be able to see the webcast of the symposium that we have coming up shortly at the end of the month, in which we'll feature musicians and the project director from that particular project, which is quite remarkable. Unearthing the Lost Songs of Kohala, as you see, that's Boots's project. We also have a remarkable project of the Lao community who are in Louisiana. It's about the Lao Buddhist New Year's festivals in southern Louisiana. And as I mentioned, another collection here, Warp and Weft of Yap's Outer Islands, which is about backstrap weaving, a special tradition, lava lava tradition in Micronesia. And one of the things that I wanted to mention, without belaboring the point, I wish I could get into the technical details of this a bit more, but you will see that the various projects have different modalities and different ways of documenting their traditions, and we are downstream of those. So for instance, the Chamorro Novenas is heavy on audio files, but also song sheets and transcriptions of the novenas. University of Houston has 7 videos of performances, but a preponderance of 32 audio files. They did it because that's what they were comfortable doing. The Lao Buddhist New Year is an interesting one simply because they are one of the few projects which included historical images from previous festivals. And I'll talk about that in just a second. They have all these compilation videos. And again, those are all online and available for you to view and to take in. Warp and Weft is another interesting one. It's strictly audio files, no video whatsoever, and 47 image files. Boots has a mixed bag. He has 4 video recordings of interviews and performances, some lyric sheets, which we're going to talk about, and a documentary film. As I said, again, speaking to his background as a documentary filmmaker. As you can see, the source materials are all digital in nature. Excuse me for the passing bus. Whether audio recordings, video documentation, images, we don't have dictates. We have guidelines, but one of the guidelines which we're pretty strict about with regard to the CCG is that they're all restricted to digital materials and limited to items produced during the course of fieldwork, which is undertaken since 2023. People have to make a significant case for including non-fieldwork items like community members, personal photos, or other such things. And as those of you in archives know full well, they're trying to go back and get permission for images which have no provenance, which are personal images. Involves a lot of public, personal information, which is just beyond our capacity to solve, and so too with the community members. I will note that these projects reflect fairly intimately how the late Jerry Parsons, one-time staff member and colleague of Judith Gray, conceptualized ethnographic collections and the goal of ethnographic documentation. What I say principles and bases of cultural documentation ethnography, as you see on the screen behind me, applies, I think, in broad strokes and even and in very specific instances to the way in which communities have conducted this fieldwork. And I'm going to read this just because I think it's important to imprint this in all of our consciousness. And what Jerry said back in the day was, there is in every ethnographic collection a conscious weaving together of different representational media to achieve a rounded statement. I've lived by that for 30 years since I've been doing work in the field myself. And I think it's actually a succinct way to talk about both the process of documentation and the process of collections management and access. I will add, corollary to that, in my estimation, is that the methodology of cultural documentation is multimodal. We document using, as you've seen, still cameras, audio, video recorders. The products are, again, multi-format. We have everything ranging from 4K to JPEGs to MP4s to MP3s in these collections. And most importantly, the practice of ethnography, as Boots is going to detail for you very clearly, is that it is a relationship. It's a reciprocal relationship, not a transactional one. There's a key distinction to be made there. So, and I'm going to turn this over now to Aaron Biddle, who's going to drive the show for a little while longer. And then we're going to, after we finish the discussion, we're going to have time for questions and answers. Thank you. Thank you.
Don't worry, I'm just clicking buttons. So. Do we need to move the mic? Oh, so we see, okay. All right, can I unplug it? Okay. No.
very short lead.
And the video for the two of you.
Could I get Aaron going to be killed? Who's going to go?
Me?
Yeah, we're gonna feedback on that soon.
Yeah, we'll see that boy.
There we go. So. Oh, my camera is showing.
This way. There. There. This way.
We have deck cards.
We need that guy with our breakfast yesterday.
Maybe the cafe. East side.
Downtown boys.
Oh,
Okay, so
yeah, he's the one who needs to be on. So.
I apparently didn't read the part of the moderator guidelines that says you should prepare a little comedy routine in case this happens. So I apologize for failing at my duties.
We got it.
We got.
We brought ours.
We brought ours. Okay, so that's
Yeah.
a little bit. From the side.
Okay, whoops.
Sounds like we're in a stadium. That's cooler.
Heavy on the echo.
Are they off? The lights are red.
Yeah, they're all. Okay,
That's
I feel like this is the intro to Smoke on the Water or something like that. I'm not quite sure. What to do. No. What is it?
It's all right. It sounds like a stadium, I tell you. Hello, Cleveland.
Can you hear us? Yeah,
There you go.
we good? Yay.
Echo, beautiful.
Jesse, can you hear us? No?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Feedback.
That's excellent. That's.
He's right there. Of course
He's
you can
right
hear.
there. So, let me see where I was before I lost my place completely. So if I was going to begin with the question, you've been. Oh, okay.
I don't think.
Is that better? No?
let me give you the mic.
Oh, I see.
There you go.
There we go.
Thank you. There you go. Make sure it's on.
Yeah, should, yeah.
There you go. So you're gonna ask me a question? Yeah.
I was going to ask you a question before I was sort of sidelined here. What was the impetus behind your project? Let's begin with the basic one.
I'll handle this. First of all, aloha to the hundreds of people in the room and the millions on the live stream. Appreciate it. And thank you for not just the question, but for inviting me. I've begun this relationship with Library of Congress and the American Folklife Center, and it's been a rewarding one. So I'm happy to come and talk about this stuff. The impetus for my project is, I think most of us Hawaiians, we have a sense of our mortality, our timeline, yeah. And as I get older, I realize I see some of the old folks in front of me passing away without sharing all their stories. And it's a shame because we've lost so much already. And as I get older, I start to think less about myself and more about the community in terms of how I can benefit my community with my time here. And collecting stories and songs and information and treasures from our folks seems to be a way that I can help. I'm a firm believer in, whatever your community is that you identify, you apply whatever gifts you have and you try to help. And as a musician, I'm particularly interested in the stories behind the songs. And I recognize as Hawaiians, all our families have songs. Everybody has musicians in a family. That's every time we get together, the ukuleles and the guitars come out, all the boys and the men sing, all the girls and the women get up and dance, and then they go in the corner and talk bad about the men. And it's the thing every time. And so having been part of this continuum, I know that everybody's family has stories and songs. And so I just felt like that's one thing I can do is go ask some of the families of Kohala, the old families, to share some of their treasures. I call them heirloom songs because I feel like they belong to all of us. They're a cultural legacy for all of us. Because most Hawaiian songs, whether it's directly or indirectly, speaks to at least the place and sometimes the time period. And so each one is sort of a snapshot of life in that place. And I felt like archiving these snapshots would make a lot of sense going into the future. Now that it's in the Library of Congress and safe, a couple 100 years from now, some kid can go in there and find out what life was like in Kohala in the 1920s, and that's a beautiful thing, I think.
So even at this early stage, what reactions have you been able to sort of suss out from the community? What have they said about the project? When you first started, was there some kind of bewilderment, and then it led to like, oh wow, I know what he's doing?
Yeah, there was in the beginning there's pushback. The old folks, especially Hawaiians, they don't want to give up their secrets. Knowledge is power, and my secrets are mine, and I will decide to whom it's appropriate to share them. Right? You know what I'm talking about. She's awake, nodding. And so you're always auditioning for these things. And before I got the grant, when I was doing this on my own without the auspices of the American Folklife Center and Library of Congress behind me, people looked at me funny, like the way my dog looks at me when I explain pasta to him. He gives me that. So a lot of people didn't want to share their stories, their songs. They didn't know me necessarily, and they felt like they should stay in their family. What I explained to them was that as some of these old folks go away, these stories and these songs are gone forever. And these songs are critical because if your great grandmother wrote a song as a love song to her suitor, and that song wasn't particularly beautiful, maybe that guy doesn't stick around. I mean, I don't know how he might have been moved by that song. And then all of a sudden, your grandfather goes away from your family tree, your mom, your aunties, your cousins, you and your brothers and sisters, all gone, never existed. So in real ways, those songs matter. And I'd like to keep those alive for several generations if we can. Once the Library of Congress got on board, everything changed. People thought, well, I guess this sounds like it must be kind of important. And I got a lot more access than I had before. They still auditioned me. They still made me sit with them for hours and explain what I wanted to do and talk about things that seemed like non sequiturs, talking about, asking me how my mom made her oxtail soup. Does she use peanuts or not? Are you a worthy human being? That sort of thing. But once we got past that stage, then songs and stories started to flow.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me move on just a little bit. And next slide, please, Eric. Among the things that you were collecting, in addition to the sort of stories, you also had the next one after that. Sorry, there you go. Okay. He also collected lyric sheets from people like Richard Solomon, and this was done in Hilo in 2023. And these were songs, again, these are unrecorded, correct?
Yes. Oh,
And the next one, please, Aaron. And can you explain this particular one for me?
no idea. No. This is by Helena Wa'a. She was a fixture in the area of Kohala. That family is still around today, and just to belabor the point of how everybody in Hawaii is related, she's family to me, which I didn't know before I started this project. But that's how these projects work. You get all these gifts. She sort of chronicled life in Kohala from the time she was a young child. And so a lot of these songs speak to what Kohala was like in the time before we got here. And so they really bring home a sense of what has been lost, but also what we still have. And I think in hearing these songs and reading these lyrics, it gives us more of an urge to, want to protect what we do have left,
Right.
and start asking questions about what we don't have anymore. So,
Right. Next slide, please, Amy. So that leads me to the segue about this particular song. Once again, this is one of those, I go back to the point about your, the title of your project was Unearthing. Literally, you
Yeah.
said you crawled around in people's basements.
yeah, under their house.
Really?
If somebody said, "Hey, I knew a guy who he passed away and his house is like a hoarder and there's stuff everywhere," I'm there. And I'm underneath the house. A lot of Hawaii, traditional houses like plantation style, they raise the house up and dirt underneath, and the wind can blow underneath. That's, free air conditioning. And I was in the dirt underneath the houses and digging through papers and fighting with centipedes to see which of these may or may not be songs.
Right.
And if anybody has recorded these songs. But I mean, that's part of the fun. I mean, I'm sure everybody in this room has a sense of that kind of adventure.
No, our archives are all completely clean.
No, they're not. No, they're not.
Free, yeah,
I've seen what you guys have.
free. No,
I've been to the Library of Congress.
that's, oh, hey, come on now.
But it was important to unearth every stone.
Right.
Because you never know where you're gonna find stuff. And in the same way that you have to talk to everybody, because building those relationships is how those happen. Because I might not have songs, but my cousin, let me make a call for you and then introduce you, and then you take it from there, and they'll decide if my cousin will decide if you're worth talking to,
Right.
that kind of thing.
Right, so basically you've outlined one of the principles of ethnographic research, which is social networks. So I mean, you try to embed yourself in those communities, and then
Yeah.
each one tells another one and
Yeah.
says, yeah, this guy's okay.
It's fancier the way you say it.
Well, yeah, I got it. That's why I work at the
That's
Library of
right.
Congress.
That's right.
So the reason I brought up that particular point about unearthing songs was, the work that you did for the CCG project was the tail end of a much longer sort of reach that you had in this particular area of not documenting songs. And I wonder if you could set up for us, we're gonna play an example of not having a musician on stage and not playing examples from what he does is like dancing about the architecture. What's the point after all, right? So we're gonna see an example of Boots's musical performance. But tell us the story behind Lovely Gardenia,
Yeah,
if you would,
I mean,
and how that led to your
Let's see if I
adopting it.
See if I can do this really quickly.
Yeah.
So when I first started looking for songs, as I said, nobody knew that they should give me their songs. They told me they didn't have songs, or they'd given to some other family. It took forever. Now, when I did this first, this thing you're about to see, we had a deadline imposed by another grant, and the film crew was coming up to film this, I'll say, in 6 days from when we were going to shoot this. And I didn't have a song, right? And so my bass player at the time tells me, I know a lady who has a song, but she's not going to give it to you. But I'm desperate. So I said, give me her number. And I called her, and she kept me on the phone for an hour and a half. And at the end of that, she said, okay, you know what? And I thought she was going to give me this. So she said, you come to my house and you talk to me. Like, right now. So I went to her house. I brought my guitar. I sat there for another hour and a half while she grilled me, sort of auditioned me. What's my genealogy? Where am I from? Who's my mom? Where'd they go to school?
Peanuts in the
Peanuts in Oxdale.
Right.
And at the end of that, she said, I think I'm going to give you my daddy's song. And I thought, yes. And then she goes, it went like this. La da da da. And I'm like, oh Jesus, this is can't. And I was telling you, it started to feel like I had COVID. My stomach was terrible, my fever. And then I said, does this at least have lyrics? And she said, oh yeah. And then she grabs a steno pad and a pencil and starts to try to remember what they might have been. And she's crossing stuff out and erasing. And so what she gave me was this scrap of paper that had maybe 9 or 10 lines that she hoped was correct. and some vague melody that she hummed, and which I filmed on my iPhone just to have it. And I took that home, and with 6 days before the film crew came up, I turned that into a song based on the context, which was this is a love song that her father had written to her mother. Her father used to manage the maintenance on the famous Kohala Ditch Trail. If anybody knows that Kohala Ditch Trail, the sugar company in Kohala made this miles long ditch, these flumes that they float parts down, sugar cane. Nowadays, people use it. They jump on boogie boards and they fly down there. But he would maintain that. So there was a cabin right next to the ditch, and surrounding that cabin were all these wild gardenia bushes. And he and a worker would go up there packing donkeys, and they'd stay there for days at a time working on the trail. And in the evenings, they'd push up their little screen windows and lay on their cots, and they'd miss their family, and those gardenia bushes would do their magic, and those scents would come wafting in. And he wrote this song for his wife. So he tells that story. She gives me the song. With 6 days left before the camera crew comes up, I do this, and then we'll see what happens.
All right. Can we play that?
We're gonna have to unmute, so hopefully we won't have too much feedback.
Each petal snowy white, with fragrance so sweet, reminds me of that night when romance created and sweet. I dream of you, though we are apart. My love is really true. You're my only sweetheart. Graceful gardenia, you're the flower of my heart. My sweet gardenia, you're my only sweetheart. Graceful gardenia, you are my only sweetheart.
Battling his inner Glenn Miller, I believe.
And the song was written in 1939, and it was a love song. So I tried to put all the context together and come up with something that felt true to his intention. So,
Next slide, please, ma'am. So coming back into the present project, and I think so you recorded this and what was the reaction of the family or her to
good question. This she's pretty scary. In fact, when I had the film crew go get her to finish the filming, nobody wanted to go get her because they was afraid of her. I had to go get her myself. We've become good friends. I love this lady. But she was very protective of her family. She gave me what she could remember at the time. She has, I think, 6 or 7 siblings, and she hadn't talked to them before we met. So after she gave me her piece, and I invited her to the premiere of the documentary, and she saw this, and I went up to her after. I said, "So, Nani, what did you think of what I did with your daddy's song?" And she looked at me. She said, "You really want to know?" I asked. She said, "Well, it's not how my daddy did it." And I said, "Okay, well, that's as close as we could get. You know, I'm happy that it lives in the world." But as a result of this, a few months later, she called me and said, "Hey, since your documentary has come out, several of my siblings have seen it. We've gotten together and we've all talked as a family about what we remember." And each of them had remembered different parts of the song. And her nephew is a professional musician, and he sat in those meetings. And she said, "I'm happy to report that now my nephew plays that song exactly like my daddy did it." And so it still lives like it did in 1939. And for that, I'm super grateful that was worth it.
what's happened after that?
After that, it's been performed. We performed at the Library of Congress. We've done it live a few places. But I recently got a call from a musician, a Japanese musician who's a slack key artist in Japan. And he fell in love with the song when he saw the video, and he wanted permission to perform in Japan. And I asked the family, and they gave permission. And he asked me to send him the lyrics and then to send me the chords. Like, I'll figure it out yourself. But he's happy to report to me now that he's playing it all over Japan in Slack Key festivals in Japan. So that song lives everywhere. And, you know, it's a good example of you never know what we're going to get when we start these projects.
Oops, sorry.
We're about 40 hours.
Okay, so we're gonna do maybe two more examples. Talk to us a little bit about this documentation you did of John Cowell, who's another Slacky guitar player. And what I was struck by was the way in which you talked about how the song, you know, came about for him when you
Yeah.
were doing the interview.
Yeah.
I mentioned that briefly before we get into the actual playing back of it.
Okay. Give me this. So John Kiav is a acknowledged Slack key master, one of the few, and a neighbor. He lives right down the road as well. So he came over and he had never recorded this song, which is strange. He has several albums. He's been on Grammy Award-winning projects as well. This song, Tutu Man, for those of you who don't know, Tutu is your grandparent. It's a sort of a slang term for a grandparent. So Tutu Man or Tutu Lady. His Tutu Man, he had never really met. Died before he was born. But one day during the COVID pandemic, when musicians couldn't be playing out, you know, in gigs, he was sitting in his yard and playing his guitar and thinking about how much he missed going out and playing. And his granddaughter walked out to the yard and sat next to him, and she said, "Papa, what was Kohala like in your young days, in the olden days?" And he realized that his young days were her olden days. And he started thinking about the fact that he never got to ask that of his grandfather. And he realized, thinking about the time period when his grandfather lived, how different, how many more people spoke Hawaiian, what the world was like and what Kohala was like. And so that song was really just a reaction to his bemoaning of the fact that he didn't get to meet that man.
Go ahead. Hey, play.
You may not understand all the changes of land. To bad, I still like to know about my
So did I make that?
time waits for no one, and the years quickly slip away. But to man, you may not understand all the changes of our land. But to man, I'd sure like to know about my island home.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go.
Great, thank you. All right, so let's move on to the next piece here. And this is going to get into our sort of final segment here. We can get to the next one. So tell us about this particular set of performers. These were the students of the Kumu teacher, Raylene Halea. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. This next piece, this final piece is from one of the folks, the composers of Kohala that we found songs from. She passed away a few years ago. Kumu Raylene Ha'alelea Kawai Ai'a. She was a fixture in Kohala, a hula teacher, and cousin to one of my band members. I told you we're all related. Yeah, it's true. So this song it's a beautiful song. We actually performed this at the Library of Congress concert. It's called Kale Lehua o Kohala. Lehua is Ohia Lehua is a special indigenous flower, a native tree. These beautiful red blossoms. in the lowlands, they're endangered in a lot of places. But on the mountain and the what we call the Va'akua is the area that's specifically for the gods, not for folks. And the old growth trees are still healthy up there. Somebody gifted this kumu a helicopter ride over the mountain, one of the tourist rides. And she went there and she was struck by how healthy these trees are. And they're all in bloom and they look like a giant red lei draped around the mountain. And so that's the name of the song, Kalele Hua o Kohala, the lei of Kohala. So that's what the song is all about. Yeah, thank you.
So this song is going to be sung by sang with her at the Audrey Valoria, Ui Lorenzo, John Calvi Jr. and John Calvi Sr. And these four people backed her up for many, many years.
Thank you. Lovely. All right, that basically brings us to the end of the sort of formal presentation. So a hand, please, for Boots Lupenui. And there's now an opportunity for questions and answers, and we hope you will take the opportunity, it's our opportunity to engage with community performers, community collectors, talk about anything that your heart desires. Boots can riff, I mean, he's a musician, so I have to keep him in check a little bit because we've got another really important.
I ain't scared of you.
So questions, please. Any?
Well, if nobody else has one, Stasha.
Hi, thank you for this wonderful presentation. I really enjoyed it. Can you comment a little bit about copyright and how did you handle that? I bet it was a tricky task.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. I don't know that it was tricky. In Hawaii, everything is so informal, and especially in the Hawaiian community. As soon as they asked, "Are you going to use this to make money?" and I said no, then that was basically that they were done with asking me questions about that. Nobody asked me to sign any paperwork. I did have forms for copyright, just permission forms and releases that I made everybody sign or asked them to sign. But to a large extent, it's really just the relationships that we trade on and asking them for our trust, so that they know we're not taking advantage or using it for any kind of monetary gain.
Right. So to that extent, when the performers recorded for this project and for other documentary projects, they do sign up permissions, which is a use form. It's not a copyright form.
Yeah.
We don't ask.
They still
for copyright.
retain.
They still retain their copyright. We are getting it in order to use the materials for public educational purposes, nonprofit uses for the Library of Congress. So that's one aspect of that particular notion of copyright, which I think is important to point out, that we're not asking people to give up their intellectual property. It's about sharing their intellectual property as they see fit in their own sort of ways. Thank you. Thank you for the question. Yes, Aaron.
looks like Bright has a question.
Yes, so it's, I think I've got it
Oh,
on voice, I guess.
Yeah, but you run up and, there's a map up there.
Thank you. Yes, so, this is quite interesting. I'm looking at, those people who left Hawaii who are somewhere that haven't heard about this music. How are you planning to get this to them? And then again, there might be these people who migrated somewhere from Hawaii, but have this, very important knowledge with them. They know some of these songs.
Mm.
What are you doing to get to them so that, we get this back here and then to the world as well? Thank you.
Good question.
Whoops. Thank you, Sasha, for running.
Thank you, man. Thanks for that question. So one of the things we did was the Library of Congress concert. That still is reverberating here. I go out places and people say, hey, I saw the video of you. And so there's YouTube channel videos for the Library of Congress. Those videos are out there. As a result, other people are sharing it other places, social media. And I've gotten a lot of response from people all over the world who have seen it and want to know more. I just talked about that one fellow from Japan who wants to record or perform one of the songs. I just started that YouTube channel for that purpose of getting this word out there. So my YouTube channel is called Kohala Mountain Stories, and I tell stories about these songs, about how we found them. And I've been getting responses from people everywhere, and it's really heartening to know that people care. But specifically Hawaiians in the diaspora, Hawaiians who live outside of Hawaii, in Vegas as the huge one, right? People are calling, wanting to know if they can play that song, if they can perform the song. Who was it specifically this woman's song, because they may be related to that woman. So it's really exciting to see how these things may facilitate family connections being made again, because that's how Hawaiians think of things, right? It's how do I know you? How are we related, right? So if these songs foster those kinds of communications, then all the better.
Thank you. One final question from Aaron, then we're going to move into the last one.
Okay,
Go ahead.
sure. I wondered if you could talk a little bit, both of you from both your sides of the project, about the project development process with the grant. So Guha, you noted that each of the projects had a different mix of formats and modalities, and I wondered what that process of developing the actual fieldwork project was.
The process of developing the Fieldwork project is to, ask people how they want to record. And Boots being a filmmaker and having a film crew makes it easier to say, okay, here's somebody who has the subject matter expertise already. We come into it in terms of providing advice, in terms of saying there are some standards we'd like you to follow, like we'd like you to record 9624 for audio, we'd like you to have the highest possible settings if you have a digital camera. We don't tell them what modality to use. It's everyone according to their means, according to their capabilities, right? The thing that we do emphasize are we are pretty good about providing that word which you didn't even like, metadata.
Oh, man.
Metadata spreadsheets, which were very meticulous. Like we had several trainings on how to fill out metadata spreadsheets, to establish the technical metadata, the content. And I think one of the things which we find really interesting, and which I think a little troubling, is that folks who are on the ground and who are doing this documentary work, they're in the middle of doing documentation and engaging community members. When it comes to the processing of those materials, then they forget to build in the time to do things like doing transcriptions.
Yeah.
So I spent an inordinate amount of time with Boots and with others just saying, we really have to get transcriptions done from your perspective, whether you use text, voice to text software to get the stuff. You'll still have to correct it. You have to disambiguate between speakers. You'll have to make sure the time code's right, because all of this is going to be in public view. So the process is essentially trying to make sure that folks have the best representation of themselves in the online presence. Does that seem like a fair thing to say?
That's fair. That's fair. I still think metadata sucks, but it is a necessary evil. It's a necessary evil. So the interesting place for me to be at that confluence. So on one side, I'm talking to these folks and digging around other homes and asking them to share their recipe for oxtail soup, so they might let loose some songs. And then when I get all that material from these homespun folks, I take it home and then I have to fill out metadata sheets and do transcriptions. And I have to think of it from the Library of Congress side. And that is difficult for me. And I've heard that from other folks because primarily most of us are focused on the community side and we don't have that sort of training. I will say that there have been gifts in even the metadata. I don't like to say, but the metadata has proven really interesting. I learned some things that I missed in the video. That going back to work on transcriptions, I found, for instance, that guy Richard Solomon. I found that he had mentioned that his original name was Yakichi Takagawa or something. He grew up in a Japanese family. Although he doesn't look it, he's part Japanese. He grew up in Kohala in a time before Pearl Harbor. When Pearl Harbor happened, his family was afraid that they would face retribution and changed his name to his mom's family name. And I didn't know that until I went back to the metadata sheets and the transcription. So it has its place.
Great. I'm pretty sure that Patrick is not going to put the phrase metadata sucks on the next.
Put it. I'll sign it.
But it seems like you're halfway there in love and metadata.
Yeah, loving metadata, that's the.
Yeah. I might need an intervention.
Yeah. All right, so that, please, a hand for Boots Lupenui. Thank you. So, for this part of the program, I'm going to get my colleague Judith Gray to come up and say a few words about this next portion. One of the things, if you get the next slide, Aaron. In 1923, over a century ago, Helen Hepburn Roberts came to Hawaii and recorded hula. And she recorded hula in Kauai and on the Big Island. Looking through the materials, I was struck by the fact that she recorded actually in Kohala, as I just mentioned to Boots. So there's a really interesting circularity to the process, which I hadn't quite wrapped my head around because I was concentrating on this. But Judith Gray has been working with these materials for a long time, head of reference at American Folklife Center. So Judith, if you could speak to what the process is by which we are planning on doing that second portion of the work that archives do, which is to return materials of cultural heritage back to communities and practitioners. That's something else American Folklife Center does. I know a lot of you here in the room who are in archives are also involved in that kind of repatriation, rematriation of such cultural heritage. I'm going to let Judith take the story on if I could.
Yes, and story it is. As anybody in archives experience. There are things that are still in the cylinders that were not copied to discs. But in the meantime, also, some of the cylinders were broken, even by the time that she gave them to the library. So now there are recordings that are on discs that are no longer available on the original cylinders. So you've got
two sets of items that are pretty much similar, but not quite identical. And then you get the numbering schemes that are applied. She herself applied field numbers. She also applied what she called red ink numbers. There were notes that were apparently written on the boxes of the cylinders in red. And so she kept track of the red ink numbers and the field numbers. Okay, they come to, well, and then she transfers them onto discs. So the discs have numbers. This comes to the library. The library assigns library numbers to the cylinders and to the discs. But the library, for whatever reason, did not choose to copy at that point to make a new copy of the cylinders. The library worked exclusively with the disc recordings, and then you get the discs transferred to preservation reels, which have a different number. And then you get the, in any case, you get piled on layers and layers of numbers, which, anybody who's worked in an archive has dealt with some of that need for constant concordance making, which does sometimes work and sometimes not so much. Okay, so here we are, over 100 years since those cylinders were first copied and first made and copied. And now in May of this year, thanks to one of our wonderful technicians at the library's National Audiovisual Conservation Center, Melissa Wydzinski, who may be listening in, I hope, to know how we thank her. She has actually copied those cylinders for the first time at the library, and we now can compare what those disc copies or what those tape copies of disc copies of cylinders sound like in comparison with a brand new transfer on the endpoint machine of the cylinders. All right. Okay.
Oh, that one's in.
Sounds too good.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that is, however, this is the transfer from the digital transfer from the cylinder done by Melissa Wydzinski at NAVCC. 101 years old.
This was a man named from Hilo, also recorded on the Big Island. So we've been talking about getting recordings back into the here we have an example of a collection that has been largely separate from the community of origin for almost a century. And now we have the opportunity, and we're just delighted that we have with us an archivist from the Hilo Preservation Society, Theo George, that we can make copies available to get back into the community and to learn from you what all of this can mean and where the relationships can go from here and all of the good things that can follow with it. So, yeah, for sure.
Okay, again, K.R. George from the Preservation Society. I'm the collections manager, and Just to give you a little bit background on our organization, our core work is in video oral histories with elders documenting Ike Hawaii or Hawaiian knowledge through the lens of hula, Hawaiian dance. And in addition to our large video library, we have a physical repository of items that have been gifted to us from those elders and community members that are associated with their lives in hula. We also do a lot of public programming, creation of educational materials, and we do have an online collections website called Digital Unicode. I first learned of the Roberts Project when I visited the center, American Folklife Center, in 2019 as part of the Tribal Digital Stewardship Program with Washington State University. And I'd never heard of the collection before, so I was really deeply intrigued. But during the visit, I was thrilled to learn that there were digital files to listen to. But when I listened to them, they fell short of the level of quality I had expected or hoped for. I had hoped for. They had originally been digitized in the early 80s, and the effort was very much commendable. But the digital versions were faint, they were barely audible, and that was probably likely an outcome of the technology at the time in the 80s, as well as the nature of cylinders. So before I had visited the center, I had gone over to the Library of Congress's Audiovisual Center in Culpeper. And from what I learned there, I felt we could do better with the Roberts recordings given the advancements in technology. So I began working with Judith and advocating for the redigitization of them. And I really profusely thank Judith for her patience and her understanding and her commitment. And my research so far has suggested that these recordings are the earliest ever made of Native Hawaiian chant. Let's see. And as many of you folks might be aware of, Kanako Iwi or Native Hawaiians, we've experienced profound changes that deeply affect our culture, our traditions, our practices, social systems, education, and language. And that all happened within a relatively short period of time. So song, chant, and dance are primary vessels for preserving and perpetuating our culture. Because the collection revealed itself to me, I believe that our organization was called to be part of its future. So I felt, kuleana, a responsibility to help in the stewardship of these resources, and not only as a member of a cultural knowledge organization, but to honor the memory and the efforts of the elders that we have worked with. The time period of the Roberts recordings coincide with the time period of our hula elders and their teachers. And those teachers were the last direct link to hula during the kingdom period. So these recordings take us back to when our elders were young children, as opposed to when we met them in their twilight years. So the redigitization of the recordings provides better audio quality so that voices, words, intonation is clearer. And that means knowledge becomes more accessible and accurate for learners. It ensures a higher quality copies so that they'll be preserved in perpetuity for future generations. They can now be readily shared online, in archives, exhibits, or through community programming, making them accessible to Hawaiian families, students, cultural practitioners, who are now found around the world, and might not be able to access the originals at the American Folklife Center because they live in the diaspora and they're far from our homeland. And just being able to hear the voices of our ancestors is profoundly moving and affirming, and it reconnects our Native Hawaiian community with cultural identity and reminds us that although we've had suppression, our traditions endure. And so it's really an honor to be part of the onset of this journey with the center, and we're really looking forward to continued collaboration and to amplifying the repository of knowledge that's been entrusted at Hula Preservation Society. So if you'd like to learn more about us, you can visit us online at hulapreservation.org, or I have some informational things over here.
Thank you all very much. I think we have exceeded our time by a large amount. Thank you all for being so gracious. Thank you to Kia George. Thank you to Boots Lupenui, please. Mahalo, as you say, and hope to see you all again. Thank you. Man, you guys, good sauce.
Sasha, do I need to stop? Okay.